Today I want to talk to you about truth. The truth is there's an ideology in this country that denies truth and will silence viewpoints that it disagrees with. Freedom of speech is one of the foundational principles that this country was built on.
Thank you, Desert Valley Elementary School, for the Valentine's Day cards from the Criminal Investigations Bureau of the Bullhead.
So, this morning, Garzone, I'm sure you know the whole fucking thing that's going on with the Kyle Moose story.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that reeled in. I don't know. I've talked to Brad about it a couple times. I think that Grigsby, and here's the thing, I'll throw this out. He has a bunch of hunches. But if he's right, he's the officer of the century. But I think they're so vague and out of fucking Twilight Zone that it can't possibly be. He's painting this guy in such a negative light. What about the positive light? You can't always be getting negative stuff. People have got to be saying that's not him. But I think he's out there putting the word around that it's Kyle Moose, so everybody else is saying, no, it's Kyle Moose. You know? So what I did is I sent down an email, my concerns to Brad, and I said, look, you need to reel this guy in because you're doing him a disservice. You're letting him go out and do all this shit, let him put this, I believe this, and I believe that in his report. There's no room for that in the report. And I said, now you got him fucking going, he went over to a fucking house where he believed Kyle Moose's ex-girlfriend lived and was told about a shooting.
Yeah, I'm cutting to the chase because that stuff is not really my business. I'm the traffic guy.
I got Brandon gonna meet with Brad.
So you heard you heard the whole story about, I guess, guys on Brad's squad saying that Brad hit Kyle Moose with the car.
And I'll tell you what I was told on that. And just like I told Brad when he asked me in front of Garzone. Brad came down to my office and wanted me to call in a detective to interview Moose. And I said, I'm not doing it. There's nothing that I can interview him on. I read all of his fucking conspiracy theories. I'm not going to go into an interview without knowing the facts to where when I call bullshit, I have something to back it up. You know how it works. And he got irate. And I said, so I heard this chase. What was going on? He goes, I said, was he in a car? He goes, no, he was on foot. He was like on a bike. I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah. And he kind of ran into my car. And that's the way that he said it. He kind of ran into my car. So I said, oh, okay. So you pretty much ran him over. And he didn't say anything. He goes, no, he ran into my car. Okay, whatever. I totally sidestepped that and went right back to, I'm not bringing a detective in.
But that's what Brad said?
Yeah, he said he ran into his car. And I said, and so, just so you know, I got called in by the captain.
Okay.
And the captain asked me, what do you know about this? And I told him, and he's like, and? I said, well, Brad said he ran into his car. But I said, the only way to figure that out is go grab Brad's car and take a look at it, see if it's got a fucking paint transfer or any scuffs, because that's what they did with Clevenger.
Well, I initially, because when Garzone called me and said that the squad was, because he's on Graves on one side, Brad's on Graves on the other, so he said that Brad's squad was talking about the fact that Brad hit fucking Moose, causing Moose to crash, and then, anyway, all through that, he goes, and it's not in the report. And I'm like,
I never read the report, so I don't know what's in there.
Anyway, so I go, all right, and he's like, no, I looked at the car, and of course, I'm assuming that he's telling me because I'm in charge of the fleet, you know, in the cars, and he's like, was there any damage to the car? I go, I don't know. He goes, well, Otero said there was like metal in the tire, and you know, I'm not asking questions, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, is there metal in the tire from the fucking metal bicycle? I mean,
yeah. You're
so
trying to put the piece together.
when I came into work, he goes, the car's already been to the garage. So I went over to the garage and talked to Mike and said, hey, it was already being repaired. Like the tire was flat, I guess. So I go, I talked to Mike, and Mike goes, yeah, there was a flat tire and there was metal in the tire. And I'm like, okay, well, where's the metal? What kind of metal was it? And it turns out it was like pieces of what looked like a razor blade, which. And then I looked at the car, and you know, it's not the oldest Tahoe, but it's not the new. Well, it is the newest Tahoe we have, but there's like, you can't distinguish, and there's all kinds of little marks and shit along the car. So anyway, from there, knowing what I knew, I went and told Jason, hey, this is what Garzone told me, and if he hit the guy with the car, it's not in the report. And that's a fucking problem, you know?
I agree.
And then, so Jason never went and, like, followed up on it. So I saw the captain and said, hey, do you know about this Kyle Moose thing? So the captain's like, no. So I tell the captain, and the captain goes, he leaves and then comes back like 30 minutes later. He's like, let me make sure I got this straight. Because according to Garzone, this was a thing where O'Connell told, not McConnell, O'Connell told Hill. Hill tells Garzone. Garzone looks into it. And of course, there's no use of force done.
So is there a complaint now?
I don't know. But then this morning, Garzone tells me that you and him were talking, and you had told Garzone that Brad had told you that Kyle ran into his car. So, from my perspective, okay, now, regardless of whether Brad runs into Kyle or Kyle runs into Brad, it's a crash.
Yeah.
And Kyle sustained injuries, either from crashing his bike by himself, as the report's written, crashing into Brad's car, which would require a crash form, because there's injuries.
So wouldn't that be a city damage form, or would it be a?
No, it would be a crash, dude. The guy running into a car on a bicycle, that's a crash, dude. I mean, that's a legitimate, reportable crash. So I'm like, Garzone tells me this thing this morning, and then I got busy doing other shit, and I was like, I'd originally come to you to talk to you about that earlier too, but we got into the other subject. But I'm just trying to figure out whether it sounds like you told the captain exactly what you just told me, and they don't have any issues with there no crash form being done.
Well, so Brad, I'm working. I forget where I was working. What was I working?
So the captain doesn't have an issue with it.
Well, here's what he told me.
Who's he? Captain?
The captain. He tells me that.
Hey, when you get a chance, I need to ask you a question, buddy, please.
Okay.
All right.
The captain tells me, he says, okay, he goes, because I have two people down there, pointed this way and said, Laurel and Gilman, that are saying that it was improper the way it was handled. I said, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I was told. And again, I totally didn't even give a shit that he said Moose ran into his car, because I was more worried about the fact that he was trying to make me bring it in.
So you didn't tell the captain about the Moose? You didn't say to the captain, Brad told me that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I told him, I said, Brad told me that Moose ran into his car.
Okay.
And I said, and the thing is they wanted me to interview him, but he was injured. They were taking him to the hospital, so I'm not going to interview an injured guy. And then so I got back from a traffic detail the first night on Thursday. Brad called me into his office. He said, make sure you're in uniform. Well, I'd already changed out. So I came down there. Garzone was down there, and he got me and Garzone together, and he says, hey, Garzone's saying that you're the one that fucking told the captain. I said, I didn't say anything to the captain. And you told him that I ran into Kyle Moose. I said, no, that's not what I said. I said, Kyle Moose, you told me Kyle Moose hit your car. And he looked at me, and he goes, well, Laurel says that it was you, and then he changed. He said, Laurel said that you told Nick told Jason. I said, I don't know how that happened. I just know that I got called into the captain's office, and he asked me about it, and I told him just what I told you right now. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So I don't know if he was trying to get me in a crossfire with Laurel, or what was going on. I don't even care to play those fucking games. But
No.
if there's something wrong,
Well,
with
they
the
won't
report,
play
then it
him
needs
with.
to be.
He won't play him with me, because he knows better. But because
Yeah, so I don't
I'm
know.
trying to figure out what my responsibility is.
Well, you
'Cause
told the captain.
Well, I didn't. Well, that's just it. I told the captain what I knew, but I didn't. Garzone told me this morning that you had told him that Brad had told you that.
That's not true. He was, and be careful with what Garzone, how he's relaying it back.
That's
to
why
you.
I'm talking to you.
Yeah, Brad asked me about who told the captain, and I said,
Well, I did.
Yeah. So I said, I don't know who did, and he said, well, you said Rawls saying that you told Nick and Nick told Jason. I said, I don't know how that happened. I'm just telling you told me that Kyle Moose ran into your car, and that was it. That's all that was said. So it wasn't that I told Rawl. I said it right there in front of Rawl and Brad.
But what Rawl is claiming is that you told him that, Brad told me that Kyle Moose
I never
ran into his car.
I never told Raul anything separate than when they were both standing there together.
Okay.
So the conversation was said, Brad, you told me that Raul, or that MOOS ran into your car. And that's where that statement came from. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't me talking to you right now saying it. It was with Brad and Raul together, and that's when I said it.
Okay.
And it was the same thing that I said to the captain.
All right.
So
It sounds like the captain has the information. I'm just trying to determine, like, okay, if he did crash into the car, if Kyle crashed into the patrol car, it's a crash for him. If Brad crashed into the Kyle with the bike, it's a crash for him. Unless it was an intentional use of force, then it's a use of force. If he rammed him off there, it's probably an improper use of force, but unless there's some, it's just, this thing is like, fuck, I'm just gonna fucking tell Garzone, you know what, take any information you have, fucking take it to, because that's the thing.
I just want to make sure that he's right with it, because I didn't tell him himself. I told it in front of Brad.
You said it in front of Brad.
Brad
okay.
and him.
Okay. And Brad didn't like say, I never said that.
I can't remember if he fucking tried to play it off because that's not the answer he wanted to get. You know what I mean? I wasn't playing it. Because as soon as I got down there and I saw Raul there, then I thought, okay, motherfucker, I see what's going on here.
Right.
It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
No, I hear you. I don't either.
I will just simply say you've been an amazing chief. You've been a good friend, and I think that you've done a fantastic job with everything that you've done here. So I wish you luck, and I wish you Godspeed.